Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why you feel more tired doing the same task after you've done it for a while? Well, this new study might have a clue. Imagine doing something that requires effort, like squeezing a grip exerciser. You do it, and you feel a certain amount of effort. Then you do it again, and maybe it feels even harder, even though you are squeezing just as hard. Why does that happen? This study dives deep into that question, looking at how our feelings of effort and fatigue change from moment to moment. Basically, scientists have theories that say when you get tired, not only does it take more effort to do the same thing, but doing that same thing again and again makes you even more tired. But they realize not many researchers actually measure how people feel these things moment by moment. They often just ask people at the beginning and end of a long task. This study aimed to change that. So, what did they do? They had people squeeze a handheld device to generate force. They weren't asked to squeeze as hard as humanly possible, but to hit specific targets on each try. After they squeezed, they then rated how hard it felt or how tired they were. They did this over and over with breaks and different levels of effort. They had three main parts to their study. First, a calibration phase to figure out each person's maximum squeezing strength. Then, a training phase to get people used to the different levels of force they would need to produce. Finally, the main task. In the main part, participants would see what level of force they needed to exert. And in some experiments, how much reward they did get for doing it. They'd squeeze for a few seconds, and then they'd rate their experience. The key here is they did this every single time, not just once in a while. It's like really paying attention to how you feel after each tiny step. Scroll figure 1. Task structures. Each experiment began with a calibration phase, which estimated the participants' maximum voluntary contraction, MVC, and a training phase where participants became familiar with the levels of effort they would execute in the main tasks, 0, 30, 39, 48% MVC in the main tasks. Participants were required to squeeze to one of these three levels for 3s out of a 5s window or rest for 5s. In order to obtain rewards, controls, they even messed with how rewards were presented. In some experiments, you knew the reward before you squeezed. In another, you found out the reward after you squeezed and rated how you felt. This is smart because it helps them figure out if the idea of a reward makes you feel different or if your actual effort is what matters. Now, this is where it gets really cool. They didn't just look at the ratings, they built a computer model to try and understand why those feelings of effort and fatigue change. They proposed that fatigue has two parts, a recoverable part that gets better with rest and an unrecoverable part that just builds up over time with effort. Scroller full fatigue model assumed that fatigue would increase with exertion and would be partially recoverable and decrease with time spent resting, but would also have a gradually increasing unrecoverable component, which does not recover with the rest taken on a trial. Matthews et al. 2023, Müller et al. 2021. Controls, think of it like this. Recoverable fatigue is like being tired after a quick sprint. You can recover by resting for a bit. Unrecoverable fatigue is more like the deep tiredness after running a marathon. It takes much longer to get over, and it builds up with every mile you run. In their first experiment, they looked at perceived effort. And guess what? Their feelings of effort went up over time. Not just because they were doing the task longer, but based on how much total effort they had already put in. Strikingly, cumulative effort was also a significant predictor of a higher perception of effort. 240.504 p.001. Indicating that participants' perception of effort increased over repeated exertion, figure 2c. There was no significant interaction between cumulative effort and any other predictor, cumulative effort, 0.113 p.737, cumulative effort reward, 2.306. p.129, cumulative effort reward, 1.460 p.227, indicating that as the amount of effort and time accumulated, participants perceived the effort levels as more difficult, across all levels, not specifically at higher or lower levels. Civic controls, this means that even if the required squeeze was the same, it felt harder as they got more tired from previous efforts, and they also found something interesting about rewards. Scroll to test this. We predicted force exerted in a mixed model with predictors of effort, reward, and cumulative effort in successfully exerted work trials. Force production systematically varied with the effort levels set in the experiment. 19,629.648 p.001. In addition, higher expected rewards led to increased force, 14.217 p.040, mostly irrespective of the effort level that was required reward effort, 3.456. P.063 figure 2b lie controls. When there was a bigger reward offered, people actually squeezed harder even if the required level was the same. This suggests that the reward might not be reducing the feeling of effort, but rather making people willing to push more to get it, which in turn makes it feel harder. And when they plugged their data into their computational model, the model with both the recoverable and unrecoverable fatigue components was the best at explaining how people's sense of effort changed from trial to trial. Scroll analysis revealed that the full model best predicted participants' perceived effort, figure 3. This model had a lower AIC and higher exceedance probability than the alternative models. And it fit the effort ratings well. Median R2.88, figure 3c. Controls this is a big deal because it means this two-part fatigue model isn't just for understanding motivation, but also for understanding how effort actually feels. Then they moved on to fatigue itself. They did similar experiments, but this time participants rated how tired they felt. They found that fatigue ratings also increased over time, and importantly, they were influenced by both the effort exerted and the reward offered. Scroll analyses confirmed that the higher the effort, the higher the increase in fatigue, 1287.873 p.001. In addition, higher obtained rewards were associated with a higher increase in fatigue, 111.598 p.001 figure 5a, while the interaction of effort and reward was not significant, 10.102 p.750 twintrals. So more effort, more fatigue, and bigger rewards also led to more fatigue. But remember that experiment where they only revealed the reward after the squeeze? Scroll to further test the effects of reward on perceived fatigue. We performed similar analyses to predict changes in fatigue ratings in experiment 3, in which the reward on each trial was only presented after the force had been produced, but before participants rated their fatigue. Controls in that case, the reward didn't significantly affect how tired people felt. This strongly suggests that it is not the reward itself making you feel less fatigued, but rather the anticipation of the reward making you push harder beforehand, which then leads to more fatigue. And again, their computational model with the recoverable and unrecoverable fatigue components was the best explanation for how fatigue feelings changed over time. Scroll analysis revealed that the full model consisting of recoverable and unrecoverable fatigue components best predicted participants' perceived fatigue in both experiments 2 and 3 in terms of both AIC and exceedance probability. Figure 7 controls. This is a powerful finding. It means the same underlying mechanism of fatigue seems to explain both how taxing a task feels and how tired you are. So, what does all this mean for us? The researchers are saying that our feelings of effort and fatigue are not static. They're dynamic and change moment by moment based on what we've just done and what we expect to do. Scroll theories of motivation have long posited that exerting effort leads to increases in sensations of fatigue, which in turn lead to higher perceptions of effort, reducing motivation. Boxham and Tops, 2008, Hockey, 2011, Müller and Apps, 2019, Tontrolls. They found evidence that fatigue has these two parts, one that recovers with rest and one that just keeps building up. This explains why sometimes a short break helps a lot, and other times, even after a break, you still feel wiped out. It's because of this unrecoverable component. Scroll, moreover, whilst prior psychological and neurocognitive theories have provided useful insights into the effects of fatigue and the perception of effort, they were not formalized computationally. Controls and their work with rewards is particularly interesting. It suggests that rewards don't magically make us feel less tired or effort. Instead, they often motivate us to try harder, which paradoxically can lead to more fatigue and a higher perception of effort. So that feeling of immense effort when you are going for a big prize, it might be because you are actually working harder to get it. Scroll, a limitation of our study is that a small proportion of participants did become significantly fatigued during the study, to the extent where they rated themselves at the top of the rating scale. Controls now, the study does have a limitation. Some participants got so tired they hit the top of the rating scale, meaning they couldn't rate themselves as more tired. This makes it a bit harder to interpret some of the finer details, but their main findings still hold strong. Scroll, in conclusion, we show that the perception of effort and sensations of fatigue fluctuate dynamically on a moment-to-moment basis during physical exertion. A computational model of fatigue previously validated on studies examining motivation could capture the fluctuations in these subjective sensations. Controls, to wrap it all up, this research gives us a sophisticated way to think about fatigue and effort. It is not just about how long you've been doing something, but about the history of your exertion and rest broken down into these two components. This understanding could be super helpful not just for everyday life, but for understanding conditions where fatigue is a major problem, like in some neurological or psychiatric disorders. The way fatigue develops and affects people could be unique from person to person. And this kind of computational approach might help us figure that out. Scroll Funding TM was funded by a doctoral scholarship from the German Academic Scholarship Foundation, Studienstiftung des Diechenvolks, by a Funds for Women Graduates FFWG Foundation, grant from the British Federation of Women Graduates, and by an SNSF Swiss Postdoctoral Fellowship from the Swiss National Science Foundation, TTMPFP 1,217,276. Controls, this is such a cool look into something we all experience. What do you think? Does this explain why you sometimes feel drained even after a short break? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science breakdowns. And ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.